Well, my friends, the Switch 2 era is beginning, and Nintendo is seeing a lot of success thus far with the Nintendo Switch 2, and I cannot wait to see every single game announcement and every single plan they have for us this next generation. But for now, there is a big problem that Nintendo has, and it all starts with what you are likely watching this video on, your smartphone. Your phone is what Nintendo has been trying to reach you through, and I think they are not only failing miserably at this task, but I think they're completely misreading the room on how they need to expand their business. First of all, let's talk about the Nintendo Today app, the latest app in which Nintendo has graced our app stores on both Apple and Android. And the biggest problem with this app specifically is that it is just trying to be a worse Twitter, a worse X, a worse gaming platform, because Nintendo Today is focused on giving you, the consumer, the person interested in their video games, the person interested in their company, daily news and daily things to check in on. Now, the problem is there isn't enough news to go around. There isn't enough interesting content for us to look at every single day. And they aren't going to be able to use this for the marketing purposes I think they're hoping to do on those off days. And for the days that they actually do have news, it's just infuriating that most people aren't going to be able to see where the sourcing is coming from, or have the app themselves to get it, or even know which days to check. Because guess what? If 99% of the time you are not announcing anything I care about, and then 1% of the time you're announcing a whole release date for one of your brand new games, like they did today, as of the time of this recording with Drag X Drive. They announced the release date for that game, and it's going to come out on August 14th on Nintendo Today. And I was on Twitter, and I saw people tweeting that the announcement was made, but I went to the official Nintendo account and it wasn't there. And so I was really confused. I didn't know where this information was coming from, and then all of a sudden I finally look it up, and after a few minutes of Googling, I found someone saying, oh, it came from the Nintendo Today app. So I look on the app, and not only does it not highlight it as one of the first things, but the release date is buried within a video. So you have to open the app, and whichever theme you've picked, which I picked the Zelda theme, that pops up first. Then you have to scroll down, and it barely shows Drag X Drive with a confirmation of the release date, but it doesn't tell you what the release date is. You have to click on it. So you scroll down, click Drag X Drive, and it's not very prominent either. I wouldn't have noticed it if I was even looking at the Nintendo Today app, unless I was very diligently clicking on every single one. And most people aren't going to be caring about Drag X Drive. So I click on that, and then a video pops up, so I have to watch this 22-second video. Well, it takes a little bit for that video to load, so now I'm wondering, where's the announcement? When's it gonna be coming out? Come on, just give me the information. I shouldn't have to do a treasure hunt to get this. I click on the video, I open the video, it plays for 22 seconds, and at the very end, it finally flashes that release date for August 14th. Now, the implications of that release date says a lot about Nintendo's summer schedule and whether or not they will eventually have a June Direct, and at the time of this recording, they have not had anything other than the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, so maybe this is outdated by the time you've seen it, but it's still very frustrating for the topic of hand, which is Nintendo's apps. Even compared to the last time that they did this on the Nintendo Today app, because this is now the second time that Nintendo has announced a big project getting a release date. And the last time was with the Zelda movie. They announced the first rendition of that movie's release date. Of course, that ended up being delayed a little bit, or a few months later, but at first it was just this big image that said coming out on May such and such, 2026, I believe. Could be 2027, but that's not my point. My point is, with that actual announcement for the release date of the movie, they decided not to bury it in the website, not to have you click on this, click on that, watch a video, then get it. They decided just very straightforward, simple marketing. It was just a JPEG of the Zelda logo and then release date. Boom, that's it. That's all you needed to see, and it's easy to share, easy to look at, just simple. Very, very simple. This is not simple, and I think at the end of the day, that is the biggest problem I have with this app. If this was our only way of getting news from Nintendo, and we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have all of these other pre-established accounts that most people go to for their information, then I think a lot more people would be complaining about this, because obviously this is what Nintendo themselves have marketed to us as the news platform. And even with other stuff that we have had announced in the past with the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, that was on Nintendo Today first. Then it went to Twitter. Then it went to YouTube in terms of getting that live stream ready and making a post about it. But we didn't see it until the Nintendo Today app was pushed onto Twitter. People took screenshots, people took pictures of it, and then put it on Twitter for us to see, because most people aren't looking at the Nintendo Today app. They have marketed it as the new news platform moving forward for Nintendo, and I think they have failed at doing so. This is not an innovative way of delivering news to us. That was the Nintendo Direct. That was innovative. Having a company directly speak to you, not even having to be on some platform or have an E3 or any sort of stage or whatever. They just had a pre-established video series of trailers and people connecting those trailers together and talking to us directly. And that was a huge shift for the industry, because once COVID hit, E3 died and people didn't know what to do anymore, they started copying that direct model. I think people don't even realize directs are barely over a decade old. It was 2011 in October, about 13-14 years ago, in which we got our first Nintendo Direct, and they absolutely did not become mainstream because they were kind of alongside those E3 presentations until 2017, in which Nintendo decided, you know what? We're not having an actual presentation live. We are giving you a pre-recorded presentation in which we can control what you see and how you see it. And after 2017, we started getting them very, very regularly, 3 to 4 times a year. 2017 with the Nintendo Switch, launching a new generation of Nintendo, erasing that Wii U, Wii era of Nintendo from your brain and giving us a bunch of information. That was innovation. This is not. This is them desperately trying to get their foothold in a market in which they have failed over and over again, and here they are failing again. And this failure will come at a cost if they decide to take this route the way it looks like it's going, because this road does not lead to a very bright future for Nintendo's news distribution and how they decide to contact us to give us information. Because if I want to know about the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, it doesn't matter how I am consuming that information, but Nintendo wants us to be consuming it through their way, through the way that they know best, themselves. And that is not inherently wrong, but once these other platforms are already existing and everyone knows this is easy, it's simple, other people talk about it, and that's just it. Boom. Because with Nintendo Today, I go to that app, I scroll through it for 2 seconds, I see what I want to see, and where do I go? I go to Twitter. I go to Twitter, and that is where everyone is talking about this new information. So Nintendo is essentially taking people away from the place in which they're going to get more hyped up about Nintendo products, and that is just a horrible business decision. All in the sake of getting their foothold in mobile markets and expanding their overall brand, which I think for the most part they have been doing a very good job at. But before I tell you exactly why everything with these apps are so bad, other than the Nintendo Today stuff, which I have explained a little bit, let me tell you about why Nintendo is trying so desperately to get their foothold in this market. Back in 2017, everyone knows the Nintendo Switch kicked off a new era. I even talked about that a little bit before with the Nintendo Direct era, and they did a phenomenal job. There was just so many things that came together all at the same time to provide a year of success that led to the most successful generation of all time. But with that, they knew from the Wii and Wii U generation, they needed something else to depend on if the gaming side of things went bad. Because with the Wii, there was a huge success, and then they also, at the time, had a home console and a portable console simultaneously being released, both having games at the same time. Now that was a big part of their model ever since the Game Boy. They had NES, SNES, Game Boy, N64, Game Boy Advance, then they had the DS as well as the Wii, then the 3DS with the Wii U. They have had 2 consoles being simultaneously produced, simultaneously marketed for the public. And the portable consoles have always been successful for Nintendo because it's so novel. Having such amazing games being taken anywhere you want was novel. Other companies couldn't reproduce it. They tried. Nintendo was the only one that could do it. So when their home consoles began to falter with the N64, then down to the GameCube, the Wii had a success, but a false success, and then the Wii U. Nintendo knew they had to combine both of these into a hybrid console to make the gaming side of their market better. So now, instead of having multiple studios working on multiple consoles with different graphical limitations, they now have a single console in which the entire company is focused on producing good games for, and it was a great idea. But what that did take away from them was the stability of having 2 consoles, because when the Wii U failed, the 3DS's success was able to keep them afloat, but nothing else at the time would have. If they didn't have the 3DS, I shudder to think what Nintendo would have done. Sure, they probably would have continued full steam with the Nintendo Switch, but I just don't know if they would have had enough money to keep that going. Maybe the Switch never came out if not for the 3DS coexisting with the Wii U. The biggest problem with the Wii U era was not only the marketing and all of the poor games and the bad console, it was just simply people not caring about Nintendo. If you don't care about the franchises, if you don't care about the company at large, and if you don't have any loyalty to any of these things, why would anyone come back even if you're making a couple of mistakes here and there? They wouldn't. They have no care whatsoever for you if you make a mistake in your biggest part of the franchise, your biggest part of the company, the gaming side. And so now that they've combined everything into one console with the Switch and Switch 2, they had to branch out into other markets just in case the gaming side went sour, and boy, did they. They expanded everything, including merchandise, Legos. They have different toys that you can buy. You have all kinds of different movies planned with the Super Mario Brothers movie, the Mario Brothers 2 movie, the Zelda movie, and I'm confident other movies are being produced as we speak, and the Nintendo Pictures Studio, a studio that was just developed a couple of years ago to make animated pictures for us, which is probably going to be some sort of show, some sort of Splatoon show, Metroid show, some animated show. They're working very hard in the entertainment side of things, not just the video game side of things. They want to be a brand in which everyone can consume in different ways. And that way, if the gaming goes south, the movies are still keeping them upright. Mario made about $1 billion for them with just that movie alone. The second one will do probably the same, and the Zelda one will get very, very good numbers for them. Now, I think also with the theme parks, they have tried to expand to get people caring about Nintendo. Even if you don't care about the video games and you've never played a Nintendo console in your life, if you've never held a controller a day in your life, if you go to Universal Studios down in Orlando, you will see Nintendo World. You will see Nintendo stuff. You will see Mario. You will see Toad. You will see Donkey Kong. You'll see Pikmin everywhere. You will see Nintendo stuff, and that will make you want the consoles, and in return, it will go to the theme park, and in return, you'll want to see the movies. You go to the theme park, it makes you get the games. You care about the games, you watch the movie. And because you love all of it so much, you keep doing it over and over again, and you're giving Nintendo money in every area of their business model. And this is great. But the one thing that they know is that everyone has a smartphone. Maybe you don't go to these theme parks. Maybe you don't care about video games. Maybe you don't care about the movies because you don't care about the games or the theme parks. How about your phones? They want to get you through the phones because everyone has a phone. And they failed so miserably at that, specifically with their games. They started off with Super Mario Run back in 2016. That was their way of trying to get a foothold in the phone market. That game did all right, but they had it at a $10 price point after you bought the game for free. You could purchase the game for free, download it on your phone, play through the first world, and then you have to pay $10 to finish the game, and no one really wanted to do that. And of course, it was Mario, and everyone who cared about Mario did do that, and all of the Nintendo fans did that, so they made a decent profit from Super Mario Run, but no one really cared. No one really wanted to use the phone app. And actually, a lot of this started with Pokemon Go. Nintendo had a huge success, but it's not really Nintendo, right? It's Game Freak. Everyone in the world back in 2016, 2015, whenever that app first released, was playing Pokemon Go. And people still play it to this day, almost a decade later. Pokemon Go was probably the most successful app of all time in terms of gaming. And people cared. They were going out. They were interacting with each other. It helped so many people meet people, have fun, get out of their homes, fix their mental health a little bit more by getting outside, seeing all these Pokemon in real life, using technology, using something only people could use with their phones. And Nintendo saw Game Freak do that, saw the success Niantic had with producing that game, and they wanted a piece of the pie. Because Pokemon exists in its own stratosphere, whether you like it or not, as a Pokemon fan. Pokemon is Pokemon. Nintendo, sure, they develop and publish all of these games right alongside with Game Freak, but Game Freak is the company that deals with all of that. They deal with the merchandise, the anime, they deal with everything Pokemon. That's why I think all of the games aren't as high quality as normal first-party Nintendo games, because sure, it's first-party, but it ain't Nintendo's seal of quality. It ain't got that seal. So Nintendo was already thinking about expanding their brand through smartphones and wanting to get more games on the phones, so Miitomo was the first attempt, and it was a very big flop. It was a Tomodachi Life type game in which you had Miis that you could interact with on your phone, and it wasn't a very good idea. Then they had Super Mario Run, they had Fire Emblem Heroes in 2017, which ended up being a very, very successful game, but only because of the gacha system and just horrible microtransactions throughout all of these games. Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, then they had Dragalia Lost, Dr. Mario World, they had Mario Kart Tour, which ended up being a decent success, but just so many people hated on it, and a couple years later, the final mobile game they would ever release, Pikmin Bloom. And none of those games ended up being what anyone could have anticipated. Mario Kart Tour was probably the closest to being an accurate experience for a franchise on the mobile device, and yet even that was still trashed by all of the fan base. At the time of that game's release, I was a little bit sick of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe because I had been playing Mario Kart 8 since 2014 on the Wii U, and I just wanted to get back into Mario Kart, so I ended up playing Mario Kart Tour every single day, getting into it, not paying a single cent, and yet unlocking many of the characters. It was very fun for me for a time, and yet even I recognized how horrible of a game it was, and how it just was not fun to play. I would never recommend it to anybody unless you were in a similar position to where I was at the time, and yet the mobile market wasn't it for Nintendo, and it will never be it for Nintendo unless they decide somehow, some way to release their actual games on mobile platforms, which I hope Nintendo never does, and will be a horrible decision if they do, and plus it would probably never be able to run on a phone anyways. After all of the failures that were these mobile games, they decided, you know what, we are going to expand our brand in other ways. The movies, the theme parks, the games, the commercials, everything else will take care of our business for us. The mobile phones are still important though, and for whatever reason, they want us to be using them, and they want us to be using our phones when consuming Nintendo stuff, so they decided, you know what, instead of using this to branch out, let's use it for our core audience. Let's try to make their experience better. The people who have Switches, the people who care about the consoles. So what apps do they have for us? Too many. Once again, too many. The Nintendo Switch app, you can use Zelda Notes on that. That is the biggest thing that they pushed with the Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild Switch 2 edition games that launched with your Switch 2. You can play Splatnet stuff with your Splatoon games and Smash Brothers stuff. All of that is just unfortunate because most of these things you would just wish would be in the actual games themselves. Why do I have to go on my phone to hear all of the voice memories from Zelda? Why do I have to do this? Why? Because for whatever reason, they have decided mobile is what they want to push. They want us using our phones because we all have phones and they're trying to innovate. And that is really unfortunate in my opinion because it is stalling the actual growth of these franchises. More people could probably get into Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild Switch 2 editions if all of these features were included in the box, and it's not. You have to download an app. And if you don't have a phone, or maybe you do and you don't care about downloading it and you don't want to play with your phone, that is just not going to be something you experience, and that's very unfortunate. Then we also have the Nintendo Today app, which I will circle back around and finish that topic off. Then we have the Nintendo Music app, and this is a great app in theory. With the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, you get yourself an app in which you can listen to all of Nintendo's soundtracks from all of their games across all of their platforms in their history. Except you don't really get that because they are drip feeding us one game per week. That's right, not even your new games are getting Nintendo Music editions. Mario Kart World has one of the best soundtracks of all time, if not the best one for a Nintendo game. All of these remixes from different Mario games, a love letter to the series and franchise as a whole, and yet with their brand new game, you can't add it to the Nintendo Music app. You get nothing, and that is horrible. It is an awful decision by them, and Nintendo Music has been very, very disappointing thus far, although it is a step in the right direction, because for years, obviously, people were putting all of these soundtracks on YouTube, and Nintendo was striking them down, and people were saying, give us an official way to listen to your soundtracks, please. Now we finally have that, and yet, it's still not where it should be. Nintendo doesn't know what they're doing with the mobile market. Then lastly, we have the Nintendo Switch Parental Controls app. That is obviously something very different for a very niche subset of an audience for these Switch peoples who own Switches and have children and want to put timers on them or want to restrict certain amounts of content towards those kids. That makes sense, and this app is actually very useful and it is very easy to use, very accessible, and I appreciate all of that. But back with the fourth and final app that Nintendo has, and by the way, that is a lot. That is too many, right? You have 4 apps, and all of these are being marketed to core Nintendo Switch fans. You have the Switch app for your Switch games. You have Nintendo Music for a Switch Online subscription. You have parental controls for if you have a Switch. And then Nintendo Today is for news, and you're not going to care about the news unless you have a Switch or a Switch 2 in which you're getting news for those things. You're not getting news for other things unless you just get a random Zelda movie announcement one day, and that is 1 in a million. Everything else is going to be from the upcoming games and from the games already revealed and announced. Things that you're only going to care about if you have a Switch. So yes, they have really honed in on what this market is for them. They're trying to say, you know what, let's enhance the user base experience of the Nintendo Switch family of consoles. And yet, they have failed at that, in my opinion. This is not a good model. Because if I want to get my news, where am I going to go? Where do I want to go? I want to go where people are talking about it, where I can see what other people think about it. Not the Nintendo Today app, in which I am confused to see other people talking about announcements and I can't find the source because your own Nintendo account doesn't give us the information. I have to go to this app, and that totally and completely hijacks Nintendo Direct's efficiency. Because if you want to have a release date given for your brand new IP, Drag X Drive, in which it's going to need a lot of marketing, it's going to need a lot of help to even reach that 1 million mark in sales, this game is going to need a Nintendo Direct. And yet, we are going to have all this information spoiled for us on Nintendo Today and not in a Direct. And I think if they didn't have this app, if they weren't pushing this app, for whatever reason, we probably would have had a Nintendo Direct that gave us all of this information. The Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct was announced from this app and not on X. It was on X an hour later, I think. And so that is infuriating for people. The Zelda movie announcement was not revealed on X at first. It was Nintendo Today. And then people took it from there and put it on Twitter. And that is just frustrating for so many people. YouTube is also another platform in which Nintendo Today could be taking content away from. So here is my proposal, because I don't want to just bash the big N and not have an actual solution for this. I think they should combine all of these apps into a singular platform, the Nintendo app. Now, if you've been listening closely, you'll know combining all of them into a single app doesn't fix my main problem with them basically taking away from all of the other platforms people already use. So here's the thing though, I think Nintendo really wants to use mobile phones in some way or another. And so if they have to do that, this is the way I would do it. If they came to me and said, Ray, we have to use phones, how would you do it? This is how I would do it. Introducing the Nintendo app. You can go on the app, you can use a Miiverse type discussion board system in which you can essentially have a Nintendo-based platform of people talking about their opinions of these games. It is not moderated in any way other than just essential moderation stuff. My main point with that is that they're not going to censor you if you're saying their games are bad or if you have big problems with it. They're just going to let you talk like they would on Twitter, X, whatever. You are able to speak your mind on this platform. You are able to talk about this on this platform. And hopefully it should be a lot less toxic than a lot of people think X currently is, because essentially people go there, you get followers, you can follow other people, you can hear about the games, and this has a unique perk. If you have a Switch or a Switch 2, you can upload your clips directly to this app from your Nintendo Switch system. This will be huge because a lot of systems now have it to where you can download it on your phone and then be able to upload it to whatever app you have from your Photos app. But this will be able to do it directly from the system itself. You take your screenshot, you take your video, then you're able to go to that in the system itself, or just press the home button a couple times, double click that, and then you can upload whatever clip you just did to your Nintendo account, to your Nintendo app, and people will be able to see it, people will be able to comment on it, you can share tips and tricks. If you're really stuck on a single player part, you can say, hey, someone help me with this part, how do I get past this, what do I do here, if it's a puzzle game, any kind of thing like that. It's a platform uniquely for Nintendo fans. And that's exactly what I think they're trying to do, right? With these mobile apps, they were trying to expand their brand to people who were gamers, sure, who had played their Nintendo stuff, sure, but people who don't normally play consoles. They wanted to do that. Now, their approach seems to be to cater towards the audience themselves, the gamers. And if they're going to do that, let's make a platform uniquely for the Nintendo Switch gamers. Because right now, everything is just this weird in-between spot in which Nintendo feels like they need to do something, and yet everything they're doing is just not quite fully developed. the Nintendo Music should have every soundtrack out the gate right now. We should not have to worry about weekly drops. We should not have to not have any new games on our systems here. We should be able to have the Mario Kart World soundtrack, the Mario and Luigi Brothership, the Xenoblade Chronicles X. Every single Nintendo game ever made should have its soundtrack on this app right now. And the Nintendo parental controls can be its own section of this app too. All of these will have sections. You can press the top left or something and it brings down a menu, and then you're able to click Nintendo Music, parental controls, Switch app features. You can have a Zelda Notes section if you really need to keep the Zelda Notes. You can have your Splatnet section. All of these are going to be sectioned off into different spots, and it's going to be very easy to use because it's all in one place. You don't have to have 4 apps for very niche features. You can use them all in the Nintendo app. And for the Nintendo Today section of this stuff, this is going to be the discussion board part, right? They're going to make it to where it's its own little platform, and they're going to have their own announcements and sections in which they release stuff similarly to Twitter. But also, they're going to focus a lot more on engagement. This is the part in which I think Nintendo is clearly missing here. They have all of these fun little things that they want to show us in the Nintendo Today app, a new feature for Donkey Kong, a new game, release dates, all these different things, and at the bottom, they have 4 different things in which you can press, like if it's useful or cool or whatever, and you can see how many people press those buttons to see what percentage of people think this post is. Is it cool? Is it engaging? Is it fun? Is it useful? What is it? It doesn't matter to most people what other people think about that unless you're able to engage with it on a deeper level. We need quizzes, we need polls, we need things in which people will be able to interact with others and comment on it, and I think the biggest solution to that is the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. For as many people gave it hate, it was a fun little thing in which you can have all kinds of information about the Switch 2 and various mini-games that demonstrated those features. Imagine a Switch 2 Welcome Tour type of model that is not used specifically for the Nintendo Switch 2, but is used for everything Nintendo. If you wanted to say, okay, let's talk about Nintendo World today, we could have a little poll to say, well, which countries are there Nintendo Worlds? Which states are there Nintendo Worlds? How many different franchises are represented at these things? And it's going to make you not only engage, not only talk about it with other people, because you can comment on it below and discuss it below and repost it and whatever, but it's going to make you want to go there and engage with the fans. You could even have some of the developers come on there and say all these questions out loud. You could have Miyamoto come on and talk to you about Nintendo World. You could have Koizumi come on and talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza. It would be a great way to get that old Nintendo Direct feel back, in which Iwata talked to us directly. That was his whole shtick. He wanted the president of Nintendo to be able to speak to the fans every single quarter, every direct, every time he had something to say. He wanted it to be from the top of the company straight to the lowest fan. This is a way to bring back the Nintendo that people love from that Wii U generation, the quirky Nintendo, the Nintendo that doesn't just focus on making the business the best it can be, but also focusing on what the fans themselves want, what the fans care about, how we can interact with them, how we can make their lives better, how we can put smiles on everyone's faces. This is the Nintendo of old that everyone clamors to come back for, and the current Nintendo, which is so successful and has a great business model for the Switch and Switch 2. This is the Nintendo app. And of course, there are flaws with this plan. There are problems that I'm sure I haven't thought of, but I think this is the best way they could possibly move forward with continuing on this model. Because if they really, really want to push these phones, and I have to pick a solution, I think this is the solution. And if they want to continue to add certain things, because I'm sure within the next year or two, we'll get some other app in which we have a 5th Nintendo app that we have to somehow manage on our home screens. And it's such an unfortunate thing too, because we have 4 right now, and that's very hard to keep up with for the average consumer, much less a Nintendo YouTuber who knows all about these things and is very frustrated with the model that is currently being sold to us. How many people do you think actually care about these apps? Not a lot. And if they're going to do it, they need to combine it into one. Simplifying their goal is the best way to get people involved and get people engaged. And that's what they need. They need engagement, especially considering the target audience here is their Nintendo Switch 2 audience, their Nintendo Switch audience. That is exactly how I would fix the Nintendo Switch app problem, the Nintendo Today app problem, and hopefully that directs everyone back to their main business model, the games, the systems, the actual thing that make Nintendo famous, that make Nintendo a awesome company, is producing amazing games. So thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content. Click the notification bell to know exactly when my videos release, and consider joining my membership program to get early access to all my videos, priority responses, badges next to your name when you comment, and a Discord server exclusively for the members. Thank you so much once again. Click on the left side of your screen if you want to see my Mario Kart World track ranking list. I love ranking all of these tracks. It's been an amazing experience so far, so go there to see all of my thoughts. And click on the right side of the screen to see what I think about Donkey Kong Bonanza and its Direct. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.